And one of the reasons that I'm extremely happy to be here tonight is because this is kind of a homecoming for me. It's this room right here where I began my journey from ignorance to awareness regarding the transgender experience. This is where I came with Alana because she was a member of the support group meeting at that time. I remember the first night that I walked through that door. I came in it a little more joyously tonight than I did that first night because I was a little apprehensive. I had no idea what was going to be on the other side of that door when I walked into this room. The only thing I knew about transgender was what Alana had shared with me, and she had only shared with me maybe 2 months prior to the first meeting that I came to with her. So before I get into sharing my side of our story, and I tell everybody, of course, Alana's book came out in 2012. It's called Hung in the Middle, A Journey of Gender Discovery, about being born in Kentucky in the 60s and not knowing the word transgender until she reached her mid-30s, or not knowing there were others like her. And I tell everybody that I wrote my side of our story and told the truth. But anyway.
That right there right off the bat should tell you she's a liar.
Okay, but before I get into sharing my side, I'd like to give you a foreword of sorts. The first words that you'll read on the foreword of my book, and the book is entitled, My Husband Looks Better in Lingerie Than I Do, Damn It. But the first words that you read on the forward page are those friggin' names and pronouns. And that's because that I've found that that's one of the most difficult things that I had to deal with in trying to talk about my side of our journey. And that, of course, comes from the fact that I knew Alan for 25 years or so before I ever heard the word Alana. So it took me a while to get my tongue straight. Okay, also, to be able to accurately portray my journey, then I have to tell you where I began that journey, and that was at freaked out. I'll be using words like rejection, mental condition, oh, it's just a phase. I went through all of that. Yes, I reacted like most people react, especially those people who are here in Kentucky, when it comes to the topic of transgender persons. Of course, I reacted in that manner because I didn't know anything about being transgender and truly believed that it had to be some sort of mental condition. Oh, that's just a phase people go through. When you don't know what you don't know. But that's where I was. So I tell everybody, if I can come from where I came from to love this person that I'm married to, everybody, don't give up on your family and friends who are saying, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to be around this, because that's where I was. And when you hear me say Alan or he or him, I'm speaking of a memory of a time before I was ever made aware that Alana exists. And when I say Alana, she or her, then I'm speaking of a time after my mind made the transition in perspective of who I'm talking about. Also, I've been asked why I used the word husband in the title of my book. And that is because when we began our journey together, I saw this person that I'm married to as my husband. And it takes me around 179 pages to explain how I evolved from having a husband to having a spouse. Okay, so let's begin. I'll tell you a little about me, and then we're open to any questions you have. There is no question that is taboo. I had known Alan for around 20 years. My mom and his mom were best friends. My sister even ran around with him and his brother when they were young. So Alan had always been somewhere kind of out there in the peripheral vision of my life for most of my life. We were friends, but we had never been close friends. And then, after my divorce in 1994, I got a call from Alan explaining that he'd like it if we could get together. Making a long story short here, but you can read the details. about how our relationship started, and they are in both of our books. But to make a long story short here, the only time that we got together was to get together, if you know what I mean. And because our relationship was solely a very satisfying sexual relationship, Alan quickly became the manliest man that I had ever known. In my eyes, he was a very masculine, aggressive, sexy man. That's all I knew. Our sexual relationship lasted approximately 3 years, but ended when I met Little Redneck, who I married in 2000. But he died just 2 years into our marriage, and there are more details about that situation in my book. But during the time that I was married to Little Redneck, Alan and I and our families remained friends, but we no longer got together. We'd maybe run into one another at the local grocery store long enough to say hello, but we never spent any time together. Then in 2003, nearly a year after Little Redneck's death, I did run into Alan at the local Kmart store, and this time I said, "Hey, would you like to get together?" And his answer was yes. So we rekindled our relationship, but not with the frequency that we had seen one another in prior years. Sometimes months would go by before we would actually run into each other somewhere and get together. In 2005, I began hearing rumors that Alan wanted to become a girl and that he had changed his name to Alana. Of course, on those rare occasions when we did run into each other and get together, he never mentioned anything to me about the rumors that I had heard. Then in December of 2006, I got an AOL instant message on my computer from Alan. We chatted briefly, and I explained I was getting ready to go to Fayette Mall to do some Christmas shopping. There was a particular gift that my daughter wanted, and I could only get it at the mall. Well, Alan said that there was something that he needed as well, and he could only get it at the mall too, so is it okay if I go with you? And I said, sure, come on, let's go. I'll be over to pick you up. So I drove over to his mom's to pick him up, but only it wasn't him who came out the door. It wasn't Alan who came skipping out the front door. It was her, with her tight jeans on and her hair combed over to the side in a feminine fashion and wearing fingernail polish. That's just about the way I went, actually. You talking about awkward. I was freaked out. And of course it's always about me, you know, it's about me. And whoever me is, it's about you. So it was always about me. So the entire ride to the mall, my mind was spinning, and I thought, oh my God, how am I going to be seen in public with this freakazoid? You know, it's about me. So it wasn't until we pulled into the parking spot at the mall that I looked over and saw Alana sitting there, and I thought, Bobby, you know this person. You've known this person most of your life. You know this is a good person. This person has been your lover. So just keep your eyes on the person, and then you won't see what anybody else might be saying or pointing or looking at you. And then I didn't write it on here, but then my next thought was, fuck them if they can't take a joke.
So now I was a joke.
Yeah, possibly.
Joke, so.
But anyway, so that's exactly what I did. Even walking through the food court and everything, Alana was talking to me, so I kept my eyes on Alana. I didn't want to know what was going on around me. And in a few minutes, I thought, oh my God, Alana has this great charismatic personality, just like Alan. That is so cool. So after we finished shopping, we decided to stop at the food court for a bite to eat. And while we were sitting there, you know how the tiny little tables and you're so close to one another? Well, Alana pointed her finger at me and she goes, "You're so cute." And I was freaked out all over again because, and the only thing I could see was that fingernail and that pink polish on that fingernail. And it freaked me out because I realized she was flirting with me. And it was just like, So, being the straightforward person that I am, I quickly said, let's get something straight here. I can be your friend because I can be friends with anyone. But if you think that you and I could ever have the type of relationship that Alan and I shared, then you have another thought coming. As a matter of fact, whenever you're here, you already have a strike against you because you take Alan away from me. Stop that stuff right now. There ain't no sense in letting it go on. Just be right there. Well, I immediately broke her heart, and the awkwardness all came back. We drove back home in the silence. And then I didn't write this part on here, but I remember when I got ready to take Alana home that day, she said, just take me back to Mom's. And I said, oh, I don't mind taking you to your house. And she said, Mom's house is my house now. Mary and I have been separated for about 3 months now. And I said, what? You're getting a divorce and you didn't tell me? And she looked at me and said, what am I supposed to do, Bobby? Call you up and say, hey, I'm going to be single, but guess what? I'm a woman now. And I thought, that's a very valid point. So anyway, I took her home, and when she got out of the car, I hugged her neck, and I thought, Alan is gone. This person that I have known for most of my adult life no longer exists. And I felt that same grief that I felt when my little redneck had died. The loss of that person was the same as the loss of this person, and it tore me up. But then a couple of weeks after the holidays were over in January, about mid-January of 2007, I was once again on the computer when I got another AOL instant message from Alan, and it read, Bobby, can we talk? We didn't get to talk much the last time we saw one another. We've been friends for a long time, and I just really need someone that I can talk to. I longed for Alan. I wanted Alan. But I didn't want to have anything to do with this Alana. So I typed back, all caps, Alan can come over anytime he wants to. And the reply was, no promises, I'm on my way. Okay, within minutes, my doorbell rang, and as I opened the door, there before me was that masculine, aggressive energy that we had shared for nearly 3 years, almost 10 years ago by this time. He opened the door, or I opened the door, he walked in, and as soon as he walked in, put his arms around me, pulled me to him, gave me a kiss, and we got together again. And then, after he left, my thought was, thank you, God, that I had closure with Alan, that I got to say goodbye to Alan, because I didn't have that ability when Little Redneck died. So I was thankful for that night, and just figured that was it. Well, then the next day, Alan called and asked if he could come over again. And guess what I said? Yes. And then he came over again the next day. And then he came over again the next day. And then the next day. And each time that he showed up, it was Alan that showed up at my doorstep. And then he even began to grow a beard. And within a month, we were living together. Must have just been a phase, I thought, and I'm so glad that Alana stuff is over. And then one day I came home and found that he'd shaved his beard. Pissed me off, because I thought to myself, he's trying to bring that Alana crap back. I'm not putting up with this shit. I'm telling him right now to get his stuff and to get out of my house. This ain't working for me. But I honestly believe that he was reading my mind, because he opened his arms to give me a hug, but I pulled away. I didn't want to hug her. I didn't want her around. Now, mind you, the only change that Alan had made was to shave his beard, but I could already tell that I was in the presence of her. He motioned to hug me again. Only this time when he held his arms out, he said, "Honey, these are the same arms that have always held you. These are the same lips that have always kissed you. I have the same level of education I've always had, and I can still change the tires on your car." That's exactly the words that came out. And it wasn't until that moment that the seed of understanding was planted in my brain. It was at that moment that I realized there weren't two separate individuals like I had believed there were, one that was a male and one that was a female. There was only one being, one energy, one person. And at that moment, I remembered my thought that I'd had back at the mall that day when I had said, "Alana has a very charismatic personality, just like Alan." And it was because I thought they were two people and thought it was so cool that they were so much alike. But it wasn't until that moment that I realized why Alana had the same personality as Alan. It's one person. The difference is simply in the name. The difference is not in the person. It's just in the name I use for that person. It was at that moment I began to understand that the person was the same person that they had always been. And it wasn't the person that was changing. The change is in me. The change is in the way I see the person. Another thing I talk about in my book is some of my spiritual journey and how I've come to recognize what I call the stepping stones that shows you your path down your life's journey. Each life is different, so we each have and will recognize our own stepping stones. And what is a stepping stone for me may not be a stepping stone for you. Alana telling me that day, "These are the same lips, the same arms, etc., was my first step upon the stones to lead me to a better understanding of the transgender experience. Another stepping stone was when we watched a movie called Beautiful Daughters on Netflix. In this movie, there is a girl named Valerie Spencer. She's a beautiful trans woman of color. She did her little black girl thing, you know what I'm talking about? And she said, "I'm just here to tell you some girls are born with a penis." And because she said it, and she was a girl born with a penis, it became real for me that girls can be born with a penis. And then another stepping stone was when I saw an interview with Laverne Cox where someone said to her, "So you were born a male?" And she immediately responded, "We are born what we are." And I thought, oh my God, that's wonderful. We're born what we are. I was assigned the gender of male at birth, but I've always been a female. And it was this information from these two women especially that I understood that the rumors from 2005 where I had heard that he wanted to become a girl was wrong. Alana didn't want to become a woman. She had been born a woman. Now these are just a couple of my stepping stones, but my stepping stone path is so long right now. The things that I have learned have been absolutely phenomenal. I am so thankful that I didn't get up from that table that day and just walk away. The experience that I have had with Alana has been fantastic. I've learned a lot during my brief period as an outsider looking in member of the transgender community. And there's at least one person in this room that kind of told me that I didn't qualify for that anymore. I've learned that it's common for a transgender male to female person to attempt to man up in an effort to be what a friend, family member, or spouse wants them to be, because the thought of losing that friend, family member, or spouse is so unbearable. That's why Alana grew the beard when she first moved into my house. I've learned that the word transgender can mean many different things to many different people, and there's no one way to be transgender. when my only experience of being with a transgender person was to be around Alana. And Alana's experience of being transgender is to be the woman that she was born to be. She wants facial feminization. We argue over who's getting the new boobies first.
Cat fight.
Yeah.
After Sean's already equal to you.
So I thought that's what transgender was to just transition from one gender to the next.
All right, I got a question. All right, she's already got boobies, so show her
Hey!
hand. Me, right? Me.
We'll talk about that later, baby. Okay. We went to the SCC in 2012, Southern Comfort Conference in 2012 when Alana's book came out. I was very nervous in the car on the way to Southern Comfort Conference because I knew that I would be living approximately a week among nearly 1,000 transgender persons and didn't know what to expect, didn't know what was going on, you know. So I was a little scared. And it didn't take me long to realize that people are just people. I don't care what their life's journey is, people are just people. That's the way it is. But we would hear people all day long addressing each other and saying, so do you get to live in film full time? So I thought, that's a good question, because I found myself alone with another trans woman. She had become friends with Alana and was hanging around Alana a lot and everything. And my idea of being transgender is to change everything. So Alana had to go sign a book or was gone to the bathroom or something. So I'm sitting there alone, and I like to make people feel comfortable, because if they feel comfortable, I'm more comfortable. So I looked at her and I said, so honey, do you get to live in film full time? And she immediately said, hell no, and I wouldn't want to. And I'm like, ding, 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 ding. What's going on here? That's not what I thought transgender was, you know. So she explained to me how she enjoys her masculine side as much as she enjoys. To Southern Comfort, I would see a trans woman walking down the hall, and I would say, okay, now, she was born a man. And I was sitting and I'd try to figure things out. And, oh, now, she's hugging that woman. Now, is that woman a cis woman or actually at the time I was using the word Gigi because that's what I just learned, but my hand's been smacked for using that. And I would try to figure all this stuff out. And then finally, I decided, you know what? Let people be. Just let people be. And I learned that if the person is presented in film, use feminine pronouns. If the person is presented masculine, use masculine pronouns. Don't try to figure out where they came from. Let the people be. And people are just people, no matter what their life's journey. Okay, now the things that Alana and I share in our books are simply a sharing of our experiences. In no way are we saying, this is how it is when you're transgender. We're simply saying, this is how it is in our lives, in our house. Of course, both of our books go into more detail than what I've been able to share here tonight, but I'm going to stop here, and if there are any questions whatsoever, please feel free to ask them. We are not shy, and are we, Marjorie?
There's a hesitation there, isn't there?
I guess I'll do it all.
Okay.
You touched on the idea of seeing yourself as an outsider looking in. And I'm wondering at this conference or at any other interactions with gender people, if perceive or receive any kind of bad vibration or that, like, you don't belong here because you're not trans or anything of that nature?
Marjorie, it is amazing that you are the person asking me that question. And you said, did I perceive that that was happening to me? And sometimes you think things are going on when they're not going on, okay? That first night that I walked in here, you were sitting right here, Marjorie, and you're very straightforward and you're very quiet, and Kaylee was here and was jabbering at me, and Cassie was here and was jabbering, and Samantha was here and she was talking, but she wasn't jabbering quite as much as the other two. And there sat Marjorie, and I would look at Marjorie, and every time I'd look at her, she'd go like this. And when we left, I told Alana, I said, honey, I think there's one girl in the room that didn't want me there. And it was Marjorie. And I know, isn't it though? Well, of course, since then, we have gotten to know you. You've been to my house, and I know that my perception was incorrect. And that was a lesson for me, because it showed me just how incorrect our thinking can be on things sometimes. Now, that was my perception, but yes, I felt that was the way it was that night. I know now that my perception was. You're okay with me being here, aren't you?
But I've gone through Southern Comfort one time and some other conferences too. And you can see occasionally some people, gender people, have trouble or an attitude towards spouses or outside. I just wanted to pick up on that.
No, I did not, and no one has ever said anything to me. And of course, the second time we went to Southern Comfort, we were going because of my book, so it was widely publicized in the whatever you call that program or whatever, that I was there as the spouse. And actually, I was walking through the hall one day, and I heard somebody say, Bobby, and I turned around and looked, and they said, I knew you had to be Alana's spouse, because that's what I go by on Facebook, and most people know me by Alana's spouse. So, and she came over and hugged my neck, and she says, I want to thank you so much for being brave enough to tell your side of the story, too. And then we were downstairs in the bar one night, and this really beautiful young lady, well, I say young, she's probably in her 40s, came over, and she said,
thank you.
She came over and said, are you Bobby, Alana's spouse? And I said, yes, I am. And I was sitting down at the moment. She said, oh, honey, I want to hug your neck. So I had to stand up so she could give me a hug. And she said, my spouse is with me at the conference, and it's because we read your book. So it's those kinds of things that I've gotten. If anybody doesn't want to be around me or doesn't want me around or whatever, then they're staying away, and that's fine with me. They've never approached me about anything like that. But I love it that people do appreciate my story. And I don't know that I've even shared why I wrote my book. When we went to the first Southern Comfort Conference, I was invited to come into the spouses session that they had, where they had the psychiatrist and everything there. And we went around the room and introduced ourselves and told a little bit about ourselves and everything. And I was one of the last ones to introduce, and everybody in the room was talking about how their spouse is transgender, but they live in the closet still. And how...
Rob, is that the gender person in the closet, the spouse, or both?
Both. It was both.
Okay.
Yes, because no one except the two of them knew anything about one of the partners in the marriage being transgender. And that was the common thread. And more than once, people would say, the ladies would say, I don't even know anyone else's experience. I can't talk about my experience, so I can't see how my experience even compares to someone else's experience being the spouse of a transgender person. And when it got to me, I said, my spouse is also transgender, but is the author of a book. And I would like to get on the rooftops and shout it. My spouse is transgender, which means I'm not in the same place as everyone else in this room. But when I left that room, I thought, these ladies don't have anything to compare theirs with. I can tell them what our relationship's like. I can tell them how I've gone from this to that, you know. And I couldn't hardly wait to get out of that room, because when I said I would like to shout it from the rooftops, then I got that perceived feeling of energy again, that I suddenly became different. Nobody had anything in common with me. Nobody wanted to talk to me because I had freedom that they didn't have. Again, I had misperceived you that night, I think. Yeah. So I may have misperceived the feeling in that room, but when the meeting was over, I couldn't wait to get out of that room. Excuse me. Next question.
I've read your articles in Q, and you say you consider yourself a straight woman. What do you mean you're straight, and what do you mean you're a woman?
Okay, that's a good question. You know, I'll answer the last question first. I mean, I'm a woman because I was born with a vagina. So that's what I mean. That is my understanding of woman up to the point that I learned the word transgender. So my definition for me being a woman is I was born with vagina. And what was the first question? Straight woman. Straight woman. Okay. I consider myself straight because I am not attracted, I'm not sexually attracted to other women. So therefore, I consider myself straight.
But you're attracted to a woman.
Yes.
You need to explain that a little
I
bit
do
better.
need to explain that a little bit better. Okay. When Alana and I first got together, and we'll talk sex now, okay?
Now you better straighten this out. We're not getting together tonight.
Baby, I got my ways. We'll get together. When Alana and I first, once I became aware of Alana, and she and I would get together, she would touch me, and technically she would be touching me the same way she had always touched me, but now I knew I was being touched by a woman. And I would, you know, it's just kind of like, oh, I don't know if I could do this. And then I had to change my mind back to not seeing gender. You know, I see this person that I love. And so I close my eyes and I feel of this warm body that I love. I feel the hands of that body on my body that I love and get lost in the energy. I've had so many people ask, what's the one question most interviewers will ask us? They say, since you're married to a woman, does that make you a... Yes. Now, how many
I was
interviews?
purposely.
Sure.
I want to make her work it out.
Uh-huh. Well, my answer to that is, if for you to have a better understanding of the relationship that Alana and I share, then by all means call me a lesbian. Alana loves it to be called a lesbian. You know, that fits for her, you know.
Power, yeah.
But in order for you to understand our relationship, if you feel like you need to put me in that lesbian box, that lesbian label, then by all means do so. I don't care. But the box that I put myself in is a person in love with another person, and that's it.
Question I would have is, I don't know if the SRS has been done on the bottom side, but if so, were there any problems if so?
Alana has asked me that question before. So far, it has not been done. Like I say, Alana has voiced that she's more interested in having the facial feminization and the breast implants in order for the rest of the world to see the woman that she is. And we've talked about the SRS, and that's something that at one time in life she desired, but she said at this stage in age that she doesn't know that she would put herself through that. And we've talked about it, and if it is something that becomes
It's not
important
just
enough,
the age, but I've got, I'm on a lot of different medications and some health issues that I'm just not sure it'd be a really good option for me.
but we have talked about that because I'm assuming in a relationship where there weren't the health issues and stuff like that, and somebody was interested in having the SRS, we believe in toys. We enjoy our toys, and it wouldn't matter. Yeah, I believe within myself, as long as we continued having the relationship that we have and enjoying our toys, we've done things I never dreamed I would do, and it's been just fine. That's something else that kind of surprises me, is that I love this person, and sometimes my happiness and my pleasure comes from the happiness and pleasure that I can give to this person. So we just take it one day at a time and play with our toys. We're a bunch of adults in here. We were in the doctor's office one day, and Alana's doctor asked me, has there been any difficulty with Alana achieving an erection since she's been on hormones and stuff like that? And my response was, oh, it's no problem. I just suck it up and go on.
Florida.
Like I said, there are no questions that are taboo. You can ask us anything.
Well, from personal experience, I can say there are issues with that.
Toys come in handy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understood earlier, you were saying at one of the conferences, someone talked about being able to live full-time, whatever, and you said no?
No. It was another person
Another person said they
yeah.
didn't ever want to do that.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, no, that
Correct.
wasn't me.
It was another person, and that's the question I'd heard the girls asking each other. We would be sitting at the table, and hi, my name is so and so. Hi, my name is so and so. Do you get to live in Finn full time? And that was it. You know, that was the question that everybody was asking. So I found myself alone with a trans woman that had kind of hung around with us and become friends with Alana and everything. And this was the first time that I was alone with her, with the other girl. So I thought, I've heard everybody ask that question. Being the outsider looking in, member of this community, I'm afraid of saying something wrong sometimes. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to step on any toes, you know. I don't want to be misunderstood, you know. So I thought, that's a safe question. You know, if the trans women can ask one another that, then that ought to be an okay question. So I looked at her and said, so do you get to live in film full time? And she immediately said, hell no, and I wouldn't want to. And it scared me because I didn't know that too could be a transgender experience. But I've learned that it can. There is no, everything can be a transgender experience. So, at least I think it can, from the people that I've met and the Any more questions? And of course, everything that comes from me does come from an outsider looking in, because it's not my experience to be transgender. I have no idea what the experience is like to be transgender. I can talk about the many transgender persons that I've met and had conversations with, and I can tell you experiences that they have shared with me, but that's it. And one of them I shared in Link this time was this transgender girl that was talking about waiting for the change to happen, and that she was, when she got to middle school, she learned about how your body's going to go through changes. And as I explained in the article, she thought her change was going to be her penis would fall off, like her teeth had come out. You know, when you're born, you don't know. There's no instructions that give you all of this information or anything like that. You know, I had a personal experience at 5 years old. My mother, I lived with my grandmother a good part of my childhood, and my mother came home with my new baby sister. So I guess I was about 4.5, because Mitzi was about 6 months old or so at the time, and she's 4 years younger than me. And I remember I was in the living room, and I could see Mom and Granny standing there talking, and Mom was talking about her husband had been put in the pen, and she was afraid, and he had escaped, and she was afraid that he was coming to find her, you know. And as a child, the only pen that I knew, her husband had been put in the pen. Okay, I saw that diaper pen that Mom had that she had been using to put on my sister's diaper, and I've got this little place at the top of my neck that's just kind of, it's just a little hard skin place. It's always been there. It's just kind of hard. And they set him straight. You know, they put him in the pen. He needed to go straight and all this kind of stuff. So in my brain, I thought, well, if they put him in a pen and he had to go straight, I wonder if they had to stick a pin up his butthole and it come out at the hard place at the top of his neck. You know, I was 4.5, 5 years old, but the words I heard were those. And at my level of understanding, that's all I knew. So at my level of understanding the transgender community, I can only share with you what I know. And I don't know it all, by any means.
Hey, Bobby.
Uh-huh.
Taking who you are, where you are now, what do you say to conventional folks, you know, be they men or women, who ask you, what are transgender people about?
Okay. I'll start the conversation myself if they won't sometimes, lots of times. Lots of times. In February, I had knee replacement surgery. So whenever the little nurse would come in and talk to me and stuff like that, I would start the conversation just like I do with lots of people and say, are you familiar with transgender persons? And sometimes they'll say yes, and sometimes they'll say no. And I'll say, my husband is transgender. My husband is a person, and I have learned to say it this way. My husband is a person who was assigned the gender of male at birth, who is a trans female. And I like that word trans female because to me it's definition. It's an understanding. And the word transgender male to female, that conveys a change. That conveys a difference. And it took me, and I thought that's what it was you're being different. It took me a long time to learn that you're being the same person. And then there was something else. We had friends come up from Tennessee, trans female and her spouse, and they decided they wanted to go shopping. So we went to Fayette Mall, which was where we had the bizarre experience when I first learned about Alana. So we're walking around the mall, and my legs are a little bit shorter than Alana's, if you've noticed. So Alana and the trans girl and her wife were walking and talking, and they were just a few steps ahead of me. And as we go around the corner, these two young ladies are standing there, and this one lady taps the shoulder of the other lady and says, "Look, that's a man in a dress." Well, sometimes things just kind of go all over me, and that was one of those times. So, being the brave woman that I am, I walked up and tapped her on the shoulder, and I said, "No, sweetheart, those are not men in dresses. Those are trans females. Those are trans women." And she immediately said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, and I said, "And there is a difference. I'm so sorry, I shouldn't be talking about people." And I said, "You have absolutely nothing to be talking about, because that's exactly where I was in the beginning too. I thought trans females were men in dresses, but they're not. There's a difference." And I handed her a bookmark, and I said, "Here's a good place to learn about the difference." So she took the bookmark and apologized again, and I said, you're fine, but now you know that there's a difference. Read the books, learn some more, and if you ever hear anybody else say, "Those are men in dresses," you can explain, "No, they are not." And turned around and walked away. And by that time, Alana was coming back and was like, "Where have you been? We lost you." I'm like, I was educating.
I like that story.
Well, thank you.
Hopefully all those trips to the mall, you've been going to Victoria's Secret.
Well, I've always been a big girl. I've gone through my own transition. I've lost 100 pounds through weight loss surgery. I stay away from Victoria's Secrets and stuff like that. Now, Alana is in, I swear, we have stood exactly in that position. This is a replica of the mirror that's in our bedroom. Yes, I have a little green outfit. Yes, Alana's got a red one and a white one and a Playboy one. Yeah, all of that stuff. And it's like, honey, I'm trying to be sexy for you, but with you looking like that. Are you familiar with transgender persons? They stand there and carry on this conversation with me, and there is an interest, and that people don't know how to approach the subject of transgender persons. People, unless you have a transgender friend or somebody in your family or something like that, you don't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about transgender. There have been a few people that when I say something about, are you familiar, how do I say it now? Are you familiar with transgender persons? And you can tell they immediately don't want to talk to me. Well, I let them don't talk. I let them walk away. And the one thing that I have found, though, is people that I've talked to want to know more. They find the subject interesting. They want to know. It's new. They don't know anything about it. And, of course, now that Laverne Cox has done what she has done, and, of course, Chaz Bono being on Dancing with the Stars, that was really kind of the first introduction. And it was, oh, well, that's fine. He's out there. And he was definitely seen as he, and that kind of stuff. And now with the Transparent show that's on TV and everything, I think there's a lot of things that are happening. And I've heard a lot of people talk about how they wish that it was a transgender person playing the part on Transparent. From this outsider looking in perspective of mine, I appreciate that they got an actor that was known that you can watch transition, because that's where I was with this person. I had known this person for so long and had to go through the understanding of transition, where if a transgender person, if this outsider looking in saw a transgender person there, I wouldn't have anything to relate to, you know. So, but I believe, and again, I barely travel out of Woodford County, let alone other states and anything like that. But I believe people are becoming aware, at least, at the very minimum, and hopefully, that will change the violence and thinking lesser of and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, this brings up another.
Working on getting the
Fairness.
fairness thing in Versailles rolling, and we've been to a few of those meetings. And right now, they asked me a question about, have you ever been discriminated against? No, you know, I mean, really, I haven't. You know, maybe catch a look. You know, my big thing is I can't get a job. You know, if you do a Google search on my name, you'll see about 10 pages of me. Now, I hear that employers will type in your name and see what kind of stuff you're doing. Well, that's what they're going to see. Now, does that keep me from getting a job? We're in Kentucky. It could be, it may not be. You know, I can't swear to that. But as far as Versailles goes, I mean, we've really not had any problems at all, you know.
We had one person who was a friend of mine who I'd known for a long time,
Yeah, about her.
that when she found out that Alana had written a book, she wanted to read the book. She bought the book, and all of this stuff is, well, first of all, I said something on Facebook about something we were doing, and she just typed in crazy. And so I responded back to her on Facebook in public where everybody could read that, I don't even remember exact words I said now, but something to the effect that you could tell that someone who does things like that are coming from the point of ignorance, and ignorance means uneducated on a subject, and it's the exact same point that I started. Okay, so then she came back and said she was sorry that she had said that, and she wanted to read the book. So she bought the book, and she started reading it, and the get-together part, she got to that part. Well, first she would leave us comments. Oh, I remember this that you talked about in the book, and I remember that this is wonderful, you know, all this kind of stuff. And then she got to the get-together part, and she said, I can't believe he abused his wife that way. Of course. So she was all pissed off again. And so I went back on there and said, you know, some people who don't participate in such a lifestyle may see this lifestyle as abuse. However, this is a lifestyle for many people in the nation, and for those people, it is not abuse. So she apologized
And
again.
she's talking, me and my first wife had an open relationship, just to clarify that.
But anyway, now when she sees us, if I'm by myself, how's Alana? If she sees Alana, actually, what got us to that point was Alana was standing in line at the Kroger store, the dollar store, or something.
It was the dollar store, and I hear this person. Are you the person that wrote the book? And of course, you know, I wanted to crawl on her account. Oh my God, they found me. So I was like, yeah, that's me. And so she started chatting. So we wound up having to move outside because we sold things up, and it wound up it was her, and I was like, holy crap.
But the thing that happened was she met Alana. She became educated. She was no longer ignorant. She realized that Alana is a good person. And now she walks up and hugs us, and whenever she sees me, how's Alana? I haven't seen Alana. But that is the only negative thing that has happened. Now, there have been people, like I say, that when I say, are you familiar with transgender individuals, they don't want to talk to me. They just walk away, and that's fine. They can't.
to them anyway. Anyway, what I'm wondering is, should I just let my sister-in-law, you know, ask whatever she's going to when she wants to, or should I put a little prompt in there, or do you think it's
You know what?
something you want to comment about?
Others in the room might be able to comment about that, but like I've said, anything I talk about, I can only speak on experiences that I've had. I would never tell someone else what they need to do.
My opinion on that is always been kind of the same. It would be hard for any one of us to tell another what to do in that situation, because our families are not the same.
Right.
Our friends are not the same. So for us to suggest or say, well, here's the way, it's what I would say, well, here's the way I done it. It may or may not work for you, but because I mean, you could cause somebody to get, in hot water or things go south and stuff. So really, you have to. That's something you have to get straight in your head and everything. But just
I'm all right with myself, but not right anymore.
Well,
Did your brother know before?
I told him 20 years ago.
Okay, so he knew your sister-in-law was there.
It's like I came out to my mother 2 weeks ago, and she told me she was embarrassed and hung up the phone. And I just waited a week or two, didn't call her back. She didn't answer, and I just said, I love you. I based out as the bigger person, and eventually I'm sure she'll come around.
Well, I went through a spell where I would go home, and from the horse farm I was working on, and I'd walk in the door, I'd shut the blinds, I'd lock the door. That was it. I wouldn't go back out, And so I was really going down, and this was in my first marriage. And my parents lived 4 houses up from me, and so I would walk up there, and days I would work and have lunch, and sometimes come from the farm and go up there and have lunch. And my mom kept asking me, she said, what is your problem? What's going on? And I just kind of, nothing, just, nothing's wrong. And so, just kept on, she just kept on, each time I go up there. And then one day she said, what's your problem? She said, you hate everybody. And I was just like, you damn straight I do. And I walked out, because I wasn't a happy camper. Because basically I wanted to die before I was 30, so nobody'd ever have to know this stuff. And that just didn't work out for me, And so I knew that something was going to have to give, because I was really miserable, had been for a long time. And so I followed her up there one day, and she's standing there cooking, and stirring something. She said, come on, she said, now you got to tell me what is up. And I looked at her, because I didn't figure she'd know what transgender was, And so I said, Mom, I'm gay. Okay, so she just never busted her stride. So, after lunch I went home. I don't know, it may have been the next day or a couple of days or something. I go back up there, and she's sitting there staring. She kind of turns around and looks at me. She said, she said, I could believe bisexual, but never gay. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. I'm bisexual. That'll work. And so, I don't know, it must have been a couple of weeks. I finally sat her down and explained to her, what was going on. Because my first wife already knew. We'd already talked about it and stuff. And my doctors was on to me about making the change, because my blood pressure was so out of control they couldn't even regulate my blood pressure anymore and stuff. And so I explained it to her, but I never would talk to my father, about it or anything, because me and him just didn't get along, and stuff at all. And so I let Mom tell him. Well, as it turned out, my dad would call me up on the phone. Hey, I just found this show on TV about transgender people and what they're going through and stuff like this. He said, it's on this channel. And so I never would tell him I've already saw it, because I wanted him to feel good about he was trying to help, And so, as a matter of fact, we had a thing here where it was the first time that Marcia come here to speak, and we had family members come in. My mom and dad both come up, and my dad actually stood up and gave a talk and everything, and I was shocked, But he never was, My family just kind of fell into the whole thing and went right along. So I got real lucky.
I don't know how everybody else is, but I've been coming out for 2 years. I don't think I'll ever not be coming out for the rest of my life. I think it's when people I think I have everybody, oh gosh, I'm at 99% and say, oh crap, this whole group of people doesn't, I just think it came out me, that's me. So it's kind of an ongoing thing. You know, like you said, you came out to your brother 20 years ago, you just came out to your sister. I think it's going to be a process that we all go through for the rest of our life.
Well, here's the thing, because I came out to another sister-in-law 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and I was counting on her.
Pass the buck.
She lets you down.
Hey, the easiest way to do it, just get rid of it, kill all your birds with one stone. Just write a book.
There you go. That does it. Everybody
Just write a
knows.
book, and then everybody knows. You know.
So you all covered most of what you wanted?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Because pretty soon here we'll want to wrap up and
That's
really
fine.
let people mill around and talk to you one-on-one.
Oh, yeah,
talk
that's
to each other
fine.
one-on-one, if that's okay.